how do you engage in useful thinking without being drawn back into that personal identity again? Because it's usually thoughts that that create the sense of being the thinker and being the doer and so forth. And I find this particularly hard insofar as planning activity, because planning by definition means you are projecting into the future, you are imagining future preferences. And so by its very nature, it has to create the egoic sense of self again so that you can have some idea about what you would like to be doing next week or something.
Yes
And
and no, I want to say to that.
I don't know how to do it with, like, I find these techniques very useful for letting go of regretful feelings about the past, but then thinking, projecting about the future creates the personal self and all the anxieties and fears that come along with that. And I don't know how to engage in useful thinking without that happening, and also to cut it off once it stops being useful, because I tend to ruminate and overthink. And well, how do you think just the right amount to not step over the line into useless overthinking that creates excessive worry and fear? And that I don't know how to do.
Got it. Yeah. Beautiful question. So I'll just give a short version of an answer, and it's something we can explore as the weeks go on here. Um, so planning occurs now. If you're planning, there is no future, right? The future is an image in our heads. It's an idea that we have about something that might happen later in time. There's no time either. So all of that is occurring now. And there is a useful function to the mind. When the mind gets really quiet, when it realizes like it doesn't have a job to do anymore and it gets really quiet, that can happen. What's left is functional thinking. So planning makes sense. You know, if you want to take a trip, you go online, you buy a plane ticket, you pack your bag, you know, you make a hotel reservation, you know, whatever that looks like. And you do it. What I like to think about it in terms of plans is you plan, because we need to plan sometimes in life, but we hold it lightly because you just don't know if it's going to happen. And if something happens other than your plan, to flow with that, to flow with that. So not to have the plan be like the absolute expectation about what reality is going to be, because it may or may not be. So to stay in that openness, plan, because it's intelligence sometimes in our human life, but to stay open with all possibilities, because anything can happen. The plane is late, there's a pandemic and you end up not being able to go, and then you can't get your money back and you need to fight the airlines and blah, blah, blah. All that stuff can happen, right? And this is reality in our human lives. This is how things come. So planning has a function, but don't be too attached to the outcomes of it. You're asking also another question, which is about the ruminating and the mind activity that comes, and the worries and the fears about the future. Worry and fear is almost always about the future. It's the unknown future. It's the idea of what may or may not happen and what that's going to be like. That's a beautiful opportunity for investigation now, not in the future, because that's not even part of the deal. What's really important is what's this present moment about, what's arising for you, and being able to meet those fears. If you have a conditioned tendency toward fear and worry and doubt and all of that, and some of us are built like that, to be able to bring love and compassion and understanding to that fearful one in you who wants to know and is afraid of outcomes. So it's a two-part answer for you. One is staying open, plan, but stay open, because planning is a very useful function of the mind. And then when there's a lot of other stuff around that you mentioned, and to just notice that, be with that, be able to find your way through what is needed, what's not needed, what's from conditioning, what's from openness. And you'll find that you can plan and, uh, do your best for what might or might not happen in the future, but you can do all of that without the sense of the separate self. It might congeal temporarily, like you have to show up with a passport that has your name on it, and it has your picture, and the picture matches who you are. You're a person in that sense. But in the flow of life, as it's emerging from formlessness, from timelessness, from stillness, there's just this emerging happening.
But what if you had to make a decision now about something that will happen in the future? Like you have to decide now if your trip should be to the mountains or to the beach. You have to imagine your own like whose preferences are these,
I know
and
exactly what you mean, and I have been in that situation asking that exact same question. And you go in and you see what's alive now about that decision. And then you do your best. And then if it comes about and you don't like it or it doesn't feel right or whatever, because if you're using like what feels right as your barometer, which is pretty much how I live my life, you don't know what's going to feel right then, but you accept that's unknown. And even that doesn't have to be a structure that you're stuck in.
I think that's the hard part, is because what you want now is to feel like, at least for now, I made the right decision, right?
That's
Like you
right.
want to make a decision now and feel good about it. But what if neither of them doesn't feel good, and you can't, and then and that's when the anxiety starts coming in, and it's like, oh God, I have to decide now, but none of these feels right. What do I do?
Right. Well, if none of them feels right, then wait till something feels right. Then let it, there's something there germinating that isn't clear yet. So we can't force clarity to come, and it doesn't always come on our own timetable. So being open to that. And then regarding the anxiety, recognize that there is that anxiety there, because that's an extra layer. So we're over time now. I'm going to ask you to just sit with that. There may be more questions about that coming up. It's a beautiful question that I'm sure applies to lots of people here, and there's more I can say about it, but we'll have to leave it there for now.